All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Be Ready podcast, where we discuss ideas that bridge communities, families, and schools so that children can be ready to thrive in educational settings. Welcome. In celebration of Autism Awareness Month, this episode will feature parents, teachers, and practitioners who have experience supporting families who experience autism. But before we get into that conversation, we want to kind of talk about things that have happened since our last episode, which was spring break. So on our page, we shared 5 spring break ideas. And we just want to do an overview of like how those things went with us. And then we hope that you'll like comment and let us know how they went with you. So the first thing was to visit a new place. So anybody visit a new place over spring break?
No.
Where'd you go? You did, Latrice?
Yes, we
Where'd
did.
you
Well, it wasn't a new place for me, but it was a new place for my husband and my daughter. We went to Yorktown, Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Washington, D.C. And so we had just wrapped up a unit in school on the American Revolution. So it was really good to kind of put that into, real time situations and see all of those things real time. But it was really cool. And we really thoroughly enjoyed ourselves.
That's cool. So I will tell y'all, we did like a road trip for spring break. So both Latrice and I, we went to Virginia for a few days, and then we broke off and went. Of course, we were going to DC and Williamsburg and Virginia stuff too. Then I was like, I have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. This is not going to end well. They're not going to have fun. And then driving them from DC to Orlando is going to be the worst for everyone.
Yes.
So we broke off and we ended up going to Atlanta. But one of the funny things I want to say is that when we gave this little idea of, go to a new place because your kids can learn new vocabulary, the new vocabulary that my 1-year-old learned over spring break was, oh, shoot.
Oh, my Lord.
Dang. And then he started saying, I don't want it. I was like, you know what?
Hey,
we out here.
Your words.
So my father-in-law was like, well, at least it's oh shoot and not something else.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. So,
oh my
gosh. So the second idea was to play the game Would You Rather? Mm-hmm. To support like critical thinking, give you insight into their world. I played that game with Cam, and I found out that he would rather go to a hotel than school, but that's really no surprise.
Me too, Cam.
Of course.
Right. So the second one was get active. Anybody do something active over the break?
My child's activeness was visiting a place called Recoil where you jump everywhere. And so he went it's like an indoor trampoline park. And that was his active, running up and down, jumping everywhere, running off some energy. So that was his activeness.
I love that.
Nice. Very nice.
Yes.
You know what? I just realized when you started talking that we didn't introduce you all. So in my mind, I was going to introduce you when we got to the questions, but like here you are on screen, so I should have introduced you at the beginning.
No worries.
So I don't want to mess up the intro. So I will just let you introduce. I'll say how I know you, and then let you kind of tell us a little bit about yourselves. So Marquette, we'll start with you. I met Marquette at the Boys and Girls Club. I work across the street, and so they would have really great, this is the best Boys and Girls Club in Central Florida, okay? And they had really great events, and one of the ones that I absolutely loved was the African American Read-In. And so I was volunteering there, and I had met her before, but this was a special moment for me. I was volunteering at the African American Read-In, and her and the senior director were talking about like things that they needed at the club. And so Marquette mentioned that she wanted to create a soft room because her son Enoch was the first child that was there with an autism diagnosis, but that other children could use that space as well. So we were able to use some of the resources that we had access through my former employment to like build out this soft room. So that's the first time that her and I really got to work like one-on-one together. So Marquette, can you tell us a little bit what you want the people to know about you?
Okay. Well, my name is Marquette Carmichael, and I am a clinician. I worked for Aspire Health Partners as a mobile crisis clinician, where I have the opportunity to go out on ride-alongs with officers at times, in addition to taking crisis calls over the phone, so that I can immediately be on site to help families and individuals who are currently in crisis. Prior to that, as Deshawn was saying, I worked with the Boys and Girls Club and in the Paramore Heritage area for well over a decade as a program director. And I also worked at the Coalition for the Homeless as one of their social workers.
All right. And now thank you, Marquette. Glad you're here. Thank you for being here. So our other guest is Chanel. Chanel is my best friend. One of my best friends. I can't, Shala get me if I say just two that are like my sisters. In fact, when I asked my son, who are mommy's sisters, he names TT Chanel as one of the people. So very close. And so I met Chanel in 7th grade. And how I met her is, y'all remember the stuff? It's like these little plastic strings, and you like will weave them in and make like bracelets.
Oh, the friendship bracelets.
Students are making them now. Yeah,
all those designs. So I saw this girl after school walking home, and she had a Ziploc gallon-sized bag full of string. Oh. And I was like, she walking by herself, I'm walking by myself. She got a whole bunch of strings. So I was like, hey, can I have some of your string? And she was like, sure. And we've been friends ever since.
Oh,
nice.
So sweet.
So Chanel, tell us what you want to share about yourself.
So yes, that is one of my best friends since middle school, and I'm truly thankful for God placing her in my life. But I am an awesome mom to an awesome 5-year-old autistic baby boy named Braden, and that is one of my biggest joy is being his mother. Outside of that, I work for a CDFI as a commercial loan officer, so I help small businesses to receive funding. And I am the proud founder of my own nonprofit called Beautiful Creations by Chanel. And we just help a lot of youth in our community, whether that's sending them to prom, doing backpack drives, scholarships, anything to help enriching our youth, especially with mentoring and tutoring. That is something that I'm very passionate about doing. So a little bit about me.
Thank you. So I'm excited to have both of you here because I know that in a few minutes we're going to have a really good conversation about children with autism. So we have 3 more spring break ideas. Okay. So the one was get active. You went to Recoil, Chanel?
That's correct. An indoor trampoline park, and just let them run crazy. Usually they have about an hour and a half. They time them so that they can kind of keep the cycle going. And he didn't want to leave. I'm able to usually, this sounds bad, bribe him to get him to go. And he didn't want to go. And so I was like, okay, we got to figure out a tactic to let him know it is time to go home. So it did his job. It wore him out. He was knocked out at night. So that was, one of the great active activities he had this spring break.
I love it. Okay. I would say my most favorite active moment was in Virginia. My in-laws have this humongous yard. And the kids were out there and they was talking trash, y'all. My son in particular.
They were.
Like, he's faster than everybody in the house. Word. So I was like, okay, line them up. Let's go. So I raced the kids in the yard and beat them. And then, because how old is
You're supposed to
Destiny?
let them win.
Destiny's 10.
No. Destiny's 10. So I beat her daughter, her 10-year-old, and I beat smoked them. I might post a video too.
That's right. Show them how it's done.
Listen, and then I made them do 5 push-ups for disrespecting my name because they thought they drop down and give me 5.
Put some respect on my name.
That's exactly what I said. Exactly. Then Destiny's talking about, ooh, I need to get back in the gym. I need to get in shape. Okay, girl. So our other idea was to reconnect with families, biological and or chosen families. And that's a way to really kind of root us and ground us in who we are. Marquette, you're connected with family now, yeah?
Yes, I'm actually in New York, and like I said, I'm here celebrating, with my sister for her 50th. I have older children. So my youngest is 15, Mia, and she is always active doing stuff with school. And then I have Enoch, who is 20 years old. And at this point, he just wants nothing to do with mom or with sister because it's like, I just want my space. But one of the things we did do, we did go to the beach because Enoch loves the water. And although I felt it was just a tad bit chilly, he still loved, going out and being in the water, even if he didn't go completely in, just walking in the water and, with the sand on his feet. He enjoyed it. So, and my daughter got to bring one of her friends, one of her besties, Lauren. So they got to hang out together. So that was a little bit of being a little bit active and just, sharing with friends and, family or being together.
Yes.
I love that. I like the beach, the water too. That kind of brings me into the last idea. Like we had quiet time on here, but I don't think it's really about being quiet, but just like doing something that centers you, centers you, grounds you, whether it's jumping, whether it's dipping your toes in the water, just how can you kind of come back to yourself and get kind of a moment, a mindful moment.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. So I think that leads us into our conversation about Autism Awareness Month. So Latrice, you want to lead us in with that?
Yes. So I'm so excited to talk about this because we know April is Autistic Awareness Month. And so we all have our blue on today to represent. Okay. I'm just so excited to talk about this. And I want to just go in with the definition. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, with autism and autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD. Okay, so it says autism spectrum disorder is a neurological and developmental disorder that affects how people interact with others, communicate, learn, and behave. And so we decided to dedicate this episode to honor, not only just these students, but also the parents of those, even teachers, workers, those who are there as a community to help support our boys and girls with autistic spectrum disorder.
Yeah, so we wanted to start off with our conversation with the definition for those who might not know what autism was. But to be honest, when I was looking up definitions, I was like, I don't like these definitions.
Right. Yeah,
they were not framed positively. So I wanted to know, a couple of things. So one, like y'all's perspective on that, because I know that you have been doing the research. And then Marquette, especially for you, I know you've done it personally and professionally. So I was curious to know, one, your thoughts about the definition, and two, like, can you reframe the definition if you choose to, by introducing us to your child?
Okay. Well, like I said, I have a 20-year-old now, and over the course of the years, so many things have changed. When autism was introduced to us 2 decades ago, there wasn't as much information around as there is now. So we were kind of out there, left in the in a blind side because it was so hard getting a definition. In the beginning, and especially in the state of Florida, they didn't even diagnose my son with autism. They had it as PDD, pervasive developmentally delayed, NOS, which is non otherwise specified. So they wouldn't even give him a diagnosis because they didn't, not to say they didn't know what autism was, but they didn't have the label the way we have autism now or Asperger's syndrome, or any of the other, diagnoses that comes along with it. So when I look at my child, and he was just my little boy in terms of, giving him these labels or putting these stigmas on him. I just accepted him for the way he was and how he was developing. So I just, catered our life and his life um, around normalcy. Like you
Good.
said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I just wanted him to just be a typical kid. Although he had challenges, I just, fostered and pushed him to do the best that he could with what he had at the time. So,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I
What
would
about you?
say, for me, um, one of the things is, obviously he's not neurodivergent like what considered to be a normal child, but Braden is a normal child to me.
I
He
love that.
does things in his way.
hmm
And what I've learned, even though we did get an early diagnosis, what I've learned is I have to adapt to Braden's world. Braden doesn't have to adapt to my world. One thing about my little boy, he is very intelligent, very smart. When it comes to numbers and math, he talks about billions, zillions. His therapist is like, "How did he know X, Y, Z?" I don't know because mommy doesn't even know that. But my child is a genius.
hmm
And yes, he has, like she mentioned, some challenges. He does not socially interact with other kids. Some kids are so excited to see him, Braden, Braden, and Braden is on his own path. You know, but I will say that he has challenges just like any other child. One of the things that I would say, and I know we'll probably get into this discussion later, was the label. And
Yeah.
that was something I was fearful for,
Mm.
the label. And I remember his pediatrician telling me, don't worry about him being labeled. Label gets him services that are
Yes.
going to help him. And
Oh.
Yeah.
so I had to kind of think that way. I'm like, you know what? Yes, they may label him as having autism, but the autism is going to help him to get the services to help him for a brighter future.
I love
So
that.
it is a day-to-day walk. I'm learning. He's my first child. He's my only child. So we're learning this together. But when I look at him, he's a typical little active little boy.
Yeah. One of the things, if you don't mind me jumping in,
Please.
one of the things for me in terms of getting caught up with the labels, um, it was almost a refresher for me because once I had the label or once I knew what it was, then I knew how to address it. I knew how to advocate for him to get the services, like you're stating, that he was going to need. So I don't want parents or anyone to be afraid of the actual diagnosis. Of course, it's going to be scary because it's something different and out of the norm. But once you know what you're dealing with, then you can become a better advocate for your child.
Love
And
it.
Right.
that is so, so important,
Yes.
especially the younger, the younger they are. Um, when you know, you're able to get
They-
whatever services that
Mhm.
you're going to need because it's going to be an uphill battle either way you look at it. But early knowledge is the best knowledge. That's
Yes.
when you can get in there and start on that speech therapy or that occupational therapy, or the I don't know if you would have to have, some may need physical therapy, depending upon, what developmental milestones they may not be meeting at that at that specific criteria. But knowledge is power, as we all know. As soon as you know, then you start knowing how to address whatever issues that your child may be dealing with.
I love that.
Thank you for sharing that, because that's one of the things we wanted to know is like, what would you say to caregivers of young children who are struggling with the diagnosis or considering testing, are noticing developmental differences and not really sure what to do?
Yeah.
I,
Go ahead. What
go
was you going
ahead. I would say, for me, it was nerve wracking. Like she said, you're fearful, but you kind of already know, And I tell people it is better to get them tested and know so you can start these services. Because my child was diagnosed a little bit after 2, getting closer to 3 years old, and the 3 year old that he, how he was when he's at 3 to where he's at now at 5 would not have been possible without those services. So if I would have stayed in denial and not gotten him the services or gotten him tested, then I feel like he would have been a little bit further off. And even his doctor, his pediatrician told me that her being a pediatrician, her son is autistic, but she was in denial so long that she waited to get him tested.
Oh,
And
wow.
she knows that if she would have gotten him tested a little bit earlier, he would be a little bit further along than he is today. So yes, it is, I still from time to time like my baby's not autistic. My baby's not autistic, but it's okay. He
Right.
gets the services he needs and he's a lot further along than he was. And I think that's a great tool for parents to understand that, like she said, once you know knowledge is power, now you can advocate and do what you need to do for your child.
Yes. If I may, Deshaun, I just listening to both of you speak, it's just amazing, and I love hearing this. But it just seemed like when we were growing up, there was such a stigma when it came to, mental health, period, overall. And even when it comes to just the information that we have about autism now, because it was just like, okay, and I hear you, I hear your heart, Chanel, and I hear your heart, Marquette, about your sons, and I'm just so overjoyed to hear about, the progress that both of you have seen. And I just love it. It just makes my heart so warm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So what's one thing that you would want the village to know about? And by the village, I mean like teachers as well as people in after school spaces or church youth groups, aunties, uncles, grandparents, cousins. What do you want the village to know about building a relationship with your kids?
I think for me, I would say I would want them to meet my child or meet them where they are. Understand that we're all different and there are going to be different challenges that come along, but accepting them for who they are and just meeting them there. Um, there's no right way to uh, outside of putting the stigma on them and just casting them aside. But if you welcome them and try and just meet them in their world, you'll get a lot more, a lot less resistance.
100%.
I would think in dealing with my own individual child, and they can sense things. They can sense when you are genuine,
Mm-hmm.
they can pick up on a lot of the vibes. So if you just a little bit more patient, if that's the one thing I really would love, if people would just be more patient with individuals, I think that you would see a difference in the community as a whole.
She took the words right out of my mouth. My word was going to be patient.
Wow.
You just have to be patient and understanding. Again, yes, he's autistic, but he's a child. And
Correct.
every child is different, whether they have a disorder, disability, or whatever may have you. Every child is different. So just be patient with them, and that's my one major thing is patience and understanding.
Totally agree.
Okay.
It's great.
So Marquette, you mentioned that Enoch is 20. So what can you tell us about this transition into adulthood?
Whew, okay. Well, I'm learning as I'm going along. Um, as a child, Enoch was, and I'm thankful for it because he was very high functioning. He didn't start speaking until he was 4 years old. And that was because I was able to catch it very early. I heard you talking about, working with his pediatrician. I went through some of those same challenges, and his pediatrician didn't want to give me the referrals to get him into speech therapy.
Oh, wow.
At 15 months, I noticed that, Enoch was having some issues, but I got him into the speech therapy, and it helped him to, to be able to start talking. By the time he was about 4 years old, he started utilizing language skills. Now, and I prayed that, my son would speak and be able to communicate. Now at 20, I'm finding myself wishing he would just be quiet sometimes. Because he definitely has a voice. The one thing I had taught him is you have a voice, son, and it deserves to be heard.
All
And you're
right.
going to hear his voice now because
Okay.
he's going to
That
communicate his needs.
that is so encouraging.
Yeah.
Talking to Deshawn, I remember telling her, I just want my baby to say, "Mommy." I just want my baby to say, "I love you."
It'll
And
come.
Deshaun said, "It came. Thank God, it came." And he's not putting words together to hold a whole conversation, but he can tell you what he wants. Can I
Mhm.
have tablet, please? Can I have? So he can tell you what he wants. But Deshaun told me when he gets to talking, don't tell him to shut up.
That's
You
right.
want him, you want him to talk so bad.
You
Don't
watch,
tell him to shut
honey.
up.
I
Yes.
So
hear
I'm
that.
just soaking it all in. I'm ready. So that's what I have to look forward to.
Something that both of you said about like patience and talking, it reminds me of this conversation that I had with Cam about communication and how all communication is not verbal. Like Braden communicates.
Hmm.
He
He
communicates.
does.
You're gonna know what he wants to do, what he wants. Like it
Hmm.
is not like a question about what he is trying to have happen. And so I remember I was like, Cam thought, oh, because he doesn't speak to me, he doesn't like me. And I was like, Brayden likes you. You remember when he grabbed your arm and pulled you down on the trampoline when you were trying to get out? That's because he likes you and he wants you to be out with him longer. So there's more ways to communicate than you
Speak.
know, just speaking words. And I think that's a gift to my understanding
Yes.
from working to build a relationship with Braden. It's just looking at, different ways that people communicate.
And I wish people would think of it that way too. Teachers will let students know that, hey, he may not speak to you, but he still does care for you. One of the conversations I had with a daycare provider was, how is he doing with the other kids? And she was like, that's their little brother. They like, hey, Braden doesn't want to be bothered right now, but when he's ready to play, he'll come. But
Mhm.
they look up to him and they look out for him. And so I think autism is becoming more known. Like you said, back in the day, it wasn't accepted. We're getting more awareness about it. Parents just have to have that conversation with their children. It's not to be bullies, and to be patient and
Mhm.
understanding. And they might not verbally speak to you, but if he gets close enough to you and he puts his car next to you and he looks at you, he's letting you know you can go ahead and play with. We can play together for a little bit. It's okay, and that's their way of communicating. So they just have a different way of communicating. So
I love
I
that.
love
Mhm.
that.
And I feel like kids have a language too. Um,
Yes.
More so than like kids and adults because I remember like we have video upon video upon video of like Braden like hugging Cam and I gotta
Kissing him
chase
on the
Braden down for a
face.
hug, but but yeah, I
Yeah.
think that like kid on kid.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
okay, So, can you share a time when you advocated for your child?
I have two quick ones.
Mm-hmm.
So, the first one was with not his now pediatrician, but his first pediatrician. I noticed something was wrong. Again, not knowing everything because I am a first time mom. And went to his pediatrician. I'm like, something's not right. Oh, he's a boy. That was his response to me. Okay, thank you. We did not go see that pediatrician again. We went to a different pediatrician.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the issue too, is sometimes even if you know something's wrong and that doctor or pediatrician tells you there's something wrong, some parents might take that as okay, they said it's okay and that's it. No, if you know something is wrong, go get a second opinion. And so as soon as I took him to his now pediatrician, I mentioned, I think there's something wrong. And she says, you know what? We'll get him tested. She's like, I'm proud of you for acknowledging it. That's a big step of you. And it takes a lot to do so. But, and again, this is my first interaction with his now pediatrician. And she was like, let's get him tested.
Mm.
And then the second occasion will be at school. Being in a classroom with a teacher who is not certified, which is a whole nother conversation. And
Yep.
not being patient and understanding. And again, we're going back to they know and sense energy. Okay. He has
Yes.
not had any problems with any other teacher before you. So you may be the issue and you may not be patient and understanding with these children. And you don't need to be in this classroom if you cannot help these kids to the
100.
capacity that they need the help.
Yes, ma'am.
You are absolutely
Yes, ma'am.
absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
There are two things I would tell any parent or any individual, especially when you're dealing with your children. You follow your gut, or for me at least, I follow my gut and I follow my God. Those are the two things that I choose to
Amen.
follow
Mm-hmm.
always. And speaking in terms of working with professionals,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'll share a story with you ladies about Enoch. It was Enoch's junior year, and we were in the pandemic. They were allowing the children to start going back to school if we allowed them to go. And he had struggled with being on the computer at home. So when he had the opportunity to go back, he was delighted. It actually got him to become what we would call a hyperverbal, where he was just constantly talking, and to the point where it was almost like Tourette's. He would blurt out just silly little things, like SpongeBob or like Scooby Doo. He was just so happy to be back at school with his friends. There was a shortage of teachers because people didn't want to go back to school, so they had a lot of paras that they just had in the classrooms. Well, this para was not as familiar with Enoch, and his blurting out certain things was disruptive to the classroom.
Mm.
So what she decided, or they decided they were going to do, was they're going to put Enoch in the timeout room. Okay. um, this happened on a Wednesday. Enoch came home, never mentioned anything. Thursday, it happened again. Friday, it happened again. Went back to school on Monday, and I get a call from the SROs. As a matter
Yes.
of fact, the sheriff's department
Mm-hmm.
contacted me and said that there was an active DCF investigation going on with my son. So I'm like, what? I'm at work and I'm shocked. And immediately I'm thinking, oh my gosh, somebody bullied him. Maybe it was one of the other students did something to them. But the sheriff decided and told me that no, it was actually a teacher. I'm like, come again? I I said, okay, I am on my way up to the school. I get up to the school and I have no shame in saying this. And I said, you better pray that these accusations are not true.
Mm.
What happened was they put him in that timeout room, which was actually a closet. And I I asked, I needed to see where my son was. I found out they had questioned him, got a statement from him, and at this time he was about 16, going on 17 years old. And to wrap the story up, because I don't want to take too much time, but what happened was we wound up suing the Osceola School Board District because they didn't put him in what was called a safe space or a timeout room. It was actually a closet. We went as far as to get a law changed so that this way all children with developmental disabilities or any kind of delays, they have to place them, they cannot place them in a secluded area. It has to be zoned as a safe space or a soft room. And this is where Deshawn came in at, because she was able to fund our soft room that I created at the Boys and Girls Club. But it was very traumatic. I'm thankful that Enoch he did not share with me everything that was going on, because I was a big advocate for school. Every day that he leaves out to go to school, I'm like, Enoch, why do you go to school? And he's like, because school is not an option, Mom. Like, he knows that I'm very big on education. So he thought that he was just being bad, and he didn't want to come home and share that because he thought he was going to be in trouble. But the one thing that he did do, and I'm so proud of him, is that he shared it with his therapist. He did tell his therapist, I got in trouble at school today, because I, wasn't being quiet. And that helped so much in his case, because the therapist was able to document that they had a conversation, and he indicated why he got in trouble at school. So the moral of the story is, I'm thankful that Enoch is able to communicate. And I'm also thankful that, he has a parent who is willing to advocate on his behalf, for what's right. But in dealing with professionals, some of them aren't trained, and some of them don't have the patience and the knowledge in order to work with our children.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah.
Even though I've heard this story before, I'm still speechless. But you mentioned, like, you're glad you were able to advocate for him, but you didn't just advocate for him. You got a law change. Like, you advocated for all children. And that is just, that's amazing.
It's on the record.
Wow. One thing, I even just listening to both of you sharing your experiences, and I even share this with other class or educators, is relationships are so important with your students. Awareness and relationship. And those two things, I think if you have that, you would get to know your students, the ins and outs, what they like, what they don't like, building relationships with your parents and in the community, having that strong triangle. And a lot of that, the what you're experiencing definitely would not take place. And so, oh my goodness, but kudos to both of you, My goodness.
So is there a time where you felt like your child was in a safe and thriving classroom? And if so, what aspect of the experience made you feel comfortable?
I say when he first started his pre-K sped, he had a teacher who kind of started the program at the elementary school that he's at. She started it. She was passionate about it, very much involved, communicating with me throughout the whole day, what was going on, things that we can help him with, introducing us to a PEC system because he wasn't speaking at that time, educating me about things that I didn't even know about. But you could tell she was passionate about being in that classroom. And it broke my heart when she left, because I was like, who is going to advocate for Braden? But I would say he has 2 parapros that's been in that classroom with him since he first started. So now, even to this day, they advocate for him. But she was really like genuine, loved, sped, was passionate about it, passionate about helping those students thrive. And I would say she helped and made a big difference in helping him to start communicating and showing us different ways. So that's probably when I felt the safest.
For me, I will say definitely in elementary school. For Enoch, um, I think that that's where we got our beginning. The teachers there were so compassionate with him, and they took out the time, and they also was able to educate me as well. But education is not just in the schools. The Boys and Girls Club played an enormous role, and that's community also, by allowing him to have a safe place to be and putting him in the population with what we call quote unquote normal children, or the general population. He got to be around the other kids, and they were also big on advocating for him and accepting him. So that was also an education in itself, because it taught him a lot of things as well. So I definitely would say the school system, especially when he was in the younger classrooms, but also, like I said, the community. The community was very helpful with that, as Enoch was growing up.
I love that you brought in that community piece, because that's very important, um, and matters. I think just as much as what happens in that traditional school setting, but we don't talk about that a lot. And I feel like a lot of times the community spaces have the better relationships with kids than you do in some of the traditional education spaces. But I think Chanel, you mentioned like teachers not being trained. And I think that's very true. Like, if there's one thing this conversation has made me think about, it's how teachers are trained to support kids with autism. So I think about my own experience as a teacher, and probably like, I don't know, my 7th year teaching, I was teaching history, but I had spent a couple of years supporting students who were in the ESE program. So I would like write their IEPs. I would go sit with them in their classes, kind of like talk to their teachers to make sure they were getting what they needed. So I did that for 2 years, and then I went back into the classroom as a full-time history teacher. But because I had that experience working with kids in the ESE program, I was ESE certified. So they took 3 kids who had autism and they put them in my first period class. And I had about like 20 other kids in the class. But nobody talked to me about like what autism meant. Like, I was able to pass a test to get a credential, but I was not like up on what I should have been up on to be able to support those kids well in the classroom and support them and everybody else. Um, so that was a really tough year for me. And it wasn't until like the middle of the year, when I went to talk to my mentor, like, why am I struggling all day? And so she helped me kind of like break down and see where I needed to do some things differently and help me understand, how to better support all of my kids. But like, to your point, I had the certification, but I did not have the knowledge that I should have had in doing the role that I was doing. So I think there is definitely a lot of work in the education system to be done to help teachers be able to support children with autism even better. So wrapping it up, what are some, Marquette, so as a mental health professional, what are some strategies that you might share with parents and teachers to support children with autism?
Okay. One of the first things I would say is, once you get the diagnosis, I would say to definitely register your child with the Agency for Persons with Disability. In the state of Florida, there's the waiting list is about 8 to 10 years before you can even start getting services. So it's imperative that you do it while your child is young, because it's going to take so much longer for you to get the services that you may need. There's a lot of other opportunities out there in terms of, even if you're trying to qualify for the Social Security disability for your children. These things are going to be imperative in terms of being able to pay for the specific type of therapies you want for your child, and also to get all of the benefits that they are entitled to. In addition to keeping them active, keeping them involved, not isolating, and just being able to overall afford them all the luxuries and all the opportunities of any other person. As a mental health professional, I would definitely say, even to some of my patients, is to get involved and to stay active. Get out there, meet people, get involved with your community, create a village for yourself, because you're going to need the support. Um, Family members will be important to have also, because there's going to be times when you're going to need a respite. It's a lot of work. And when you're dealing with, children, is a lot of repetition. So once again, we're going to harp on the patience, being very patient, and also building a strong support team so that you can have that healing tree, around you.
I love that. Is there anything else that you feel that either one of you feel like we didn't talk about today that should be a part of this conversation?
No, I just encourage anybody to take the steps to get their children tested, and like she said, God and gut.
The two G's.
I love
Follow the
that.
two G's.
I'm using
I'm
that.
gonna use that too.
Listen, I wrote it down on my paper. Follow my gut and follow my God. That's the takeaway.
Yes, I love that, and and just hold on to the roller coaster. Life is ups and downs, but
Yeah.
being able to be that advocate for your child. When I first got the diagnosis, I'll be honest, I was like, why me? And I had another friend tell me, why not you?
Mm-hmm.
Why not you? You're the perfect person for
There
him.
you go.
God
You was
made him
designed
for
for
you.
it. Trust and believe. Mm-hmm.
So yes, I understand it's nerve wracking and it's scary, but
Mm-hmm.
do it for your child's sake.
Yeah.
So good.
I love it. Well, thank you, ladies, for being a part of the podcast. And sharing your personal and your professional experiences, and sharing your heart as mothers with us today. We really, really, really appreciate it. And we'll move forward as advocates of children with autism, and hopefully expand this conversation in our community. So thank you for sharing and increasing awareness about what you're experiencing.
And thank
Well,
you for
thank you
allowing
for
us to
having
talk.
us.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.